Joining me now is 2024 presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, sir. I want to start with what I began the program with, which is this racist shooter killing 3 black people in Jacksonville yesterday. What is your reaction to the shooting?
It is such a tragedy, and my heart goes out to those families. This should not be happening in the United States of America, and it is wrong. The reality is we have a mental health epidemic in this country. There are reports that this particular individual, the perpetrator, was indeed evaluated for mental health deficiencies as well. And I think we need to have the courage in this country to bring back a practice of putting back psychiatrically ill people who pose a risk to their communities into psychiatric institutions, not just drugging them up, but faith-based approaches and other approaches that fill our longing for purpose and meaning in this country. I think it is just a shame that we even have mass shootings like this, be it the one that happened in Florida, be it the recent one, the Nashville shooter in a Christian school, killing 6 in a school. We have to address that mental health epidemic, and we need leaders with the courage to do it. But my heart goes out to those families, and I hope something like this never happens again.
Mental health is one aspect of these shootings, and apparently, and we're still learning a lot about what happened. The facts are still coming out. Also, this was very much apparently racially motivated. The sheriff there said point blank that this shooter had manifestos coming, 3 manifestos, and said specifically that he went to this dollar store with the intent of killing black people.
I think that is heinous and deserves to be called out for what it is. The reality is we've created such a racialized culture in this country in the last several years that right as the last few burning embers of racism were burning out, we have a culture in this country largely created by media and establishment and universities and politicians that throw kerosene on that racism. And I can think of no better way to fuel racism in this country than to take something away from other people on the basis of their skin color. I've been saying that for years. And I think that is driving, sadly, a new wave of anti-black and anti-Hispanic racism in this country. I think the right way forward is if we want to stop hate and discrimination on the basis of race, let's stop discriminating on the basis of race and see what unites us as Americans, because I do not think this kind of racial division and any division is good for us as the United States.
I believe that there are a lot of people of color in this country who don't think it was just lasting embers of racism, but that a lot more work had to be done, particularly given the history of the systemic racism in this country with slavery and beyond. I want to ask you about a comment that you made about white supremacy in Iowa on Friday.
I've never once encountered that yet. I'm sure the boogeyman white supremacist exists somewhere in America. I've just never met him. Never seen one. Never met one in my life, right? Maybe I'll meet a unicorn sooner. And maybe those exist too.
So just because somebody hasn't encountered one doesn't mean that the notion of white supremacy doesn't exist as a threat in America. What do you think goes through the minds of the families of the 3 victims in yesterday's shooting when they hear you say that white supremacy is basically a fantasy?
I'm sure they're grieving for their loss, and I don't want to politicize those victims, Dana. This is a very sensitive situation where we should have nothing but foremost respect for those victims and not bring them into partisan politics. But I was responding to a question where someone asked me, what racism have I experienced in recent years? And I answered honestly, most of that racism has come from the modern left. It's happening during the course of this campaign. Kara Swisher calling me Ramaswamy the other day and reveling in making twists of my last name. People effectively reducing me to the color of my skin and my attributes. That comes today from the modern left. But the reality is, this is part of a dogma in this country. Do you acknowledge, though, that white supremacy
does still exist in the United States?
I acknowledge that all forms of racial animus exist in the United States, including fringe branches. I mean, that's clearly what was at the head of this mentally deranged individual responsible for this shooting, yes. But I think there are many forms of mental derangement that cause us to see one another on the basis of our skin color and our attributes. And I think what we need to revive, Dana, and it's my job as the leader, hopefully as the next president, to do this, to revive our doctrine of e pluribus unum, not just celebrating our diversity and our skin-deep attributes, but celebrating what unites us across that diversity. That's what we've forgotten in the United States of America. Our true strength is the set of ideals that unite us. That's my job to revive as our next president. And I think that the next generation in particular is so starved for that, starved for commonality, starved for a nation that is unified, bigger than the sum of its parts. That's what we need to recreate in this country. And to those who say the remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination, I say no. The right remedy is actually abandoning all discrimination and moving forward with colorblind meritocracy in the United States of America.
You took it to another level on Friday. In addition to the comment we played, you took issue with comments from Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She reportedly said, quote, "We don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice." About that, you said, "These are the words of the modern grand wizards of the modern KKK." You know, I'm sure, the KKK was responsible for more than a century's worth of horrific lynchings, rapes, murders of Black people. How in any way are the views you're talking about comparable to the views and atrocities committed by the KKK?
What I said is the Grand Wizards of the KKK would be proud of what they would hear her say, because there's nothing more racist than saying that your skin color predicts something about the content of your viewpoints or your ideas.
You didn't just say they would be proud. You said these are the words of the modern Grand Wizards of the modern KKK.
It is the same spirit. You're right about that, Dana. I think it is the same spirit to say that I can look at you and based on just your skin color, that I know something about the content of your character, that I know something about the content of the viewpoints you're allowed to express. For Ayanna Pressley to tell me that because of my skin color, I can't express my views, that is wrong. It is divisive. It is driving hate in this country. This is dividing our country to a breaking point.
That is a debate that is based on nonviolent discussion. That you just said you're using rhetoric, which she said she's using rhetoric. That's one thing. And another thing is to say that she represents and she is a modern version of a KKK, which, as you know, was dedicated to the subjugation and violence against Black people. How on earth is she a modern Grand Wizard of that kind of organization?
Let's be intellectually honest and get to the heart of what this debate ought to be about. There is a worldview that says that the remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination, that if you're Black or brown, you have to have a particular point of view. That's from Ibram Kendi. That's from Ayanna Pressley, the people I quoted in my speech yesterday.
But can you have an intellectually honest conversation when you accuse her of being a Grand Wizard of the KKK? Can you have that intellectually honest discussion with that kind of rhetoric?
Yes, I can, Dana, because the point I'm highlighting is that even the people who, in good spirit, we all agree that the KKK was an awful organization that is a toxic stain in our national history. So given that we can start from that point of agreement, now that allows us to say, well, who actually sounds more like that organization today? The people who are calling for more racial discrimination on the basis of skin color. So yes, I think that is an intellectually useful starting point for a provocative discussion that we need to have in this country.
The whole point is the KKK wasn't just about rhetoric.
We have to speak openly.
They lynched people, they murdered people, they raped people, they burned their homes.
And that was wrong.
Simply
that was obviously wrong.
Wrong. Okay, so again,
that is obviously a wrong thing.
If you want to have an intellectual discussion, do you think that maybe comparing her to the Grand Wizard and the notion of what she said to being a modern leader of the KKK was maybe a step too far, or you stand by what you said?
I stand by what I said to provoke an open and honest discussion in this country, because there is a gap, Dana, between what people will say in private today and what they will say in public. I think we need to close that gap. I think we need to have real, open, honest, raw conversation as Americans. That is our path to national unity. And there are many Americans today who are deeply frustrated by the new culture of anti-racism that's really racism in new clothing. And we need to have that debate in the open. Dana, I think that you're doing, with due respect, what many in the media do, picking on some fringe comment in the context of a broader context that I was offering it in a speech
All right, so
avoiding
you
the
just
meat
said that
of
your
the
comment
issue.
was fringe.
Let's have the courage to confront the meat of that. No, I'm saying you drew a
You
fringe
just
comment from a
described your
much
comment
longer
as fringe.
speech. As I described you picking one fringe comment from a long speech that I gave to duck debate from the real issue that I think you don't want to have, Dana, because I think you probably agree with me on this, that this is toxic
I think that
rhetoric
this debate,
from leading politicians
I think that this
on
debate
dividing
is,
us on the basis of race. And I want to have
I
the
think
open
this
debate.
debate is fascinating and interesting and opening and important. What I did was
I do too.
explain to our viewers that you were asked a question and you took it to a point where you called a sitting member of Congress who is black, who was having discussions about race, calling her the modern grand wizard of the KKK. And I'm just not sure how that's open and honest discussion.